In those 20 years or before, Bill, have you ever seen anything like what's happening on the Dem side right now?
No. And, I've been sort of retired for a few years, but I've come back into it in recent months. I'm doing some consulting work and kind of getting back into the game. And what I used to tell myself during my retirement was, this is great because the national conversation has gotten so dumb. I'm so glad to be out of it. But I'll tell you, I happened to get back into it and it got real interesting real fast. This is bonkers to be able to cover these consequential, monumental developments. And, we think we've seen, some big stuff in the last 2.5 weeks. Wait for the next 4 months. I mean, all of the scenarios in front of us are crazy. And I mean, even the least, even the most likely scenarios are going to be extraordinary. So yeah, this is a great time to be in the business, no matter what your politics are or preferences are. Just covering these big stories is a blast.
Because the Dems aren't done with their lawfare against Trump. It's been gutted, but they're not done. And I haven't counted Jack Smith out of taking just the things Trump's lawyer admitted at the Supreme Court argument are not official acts and filing a new indictment just based on those, something Trump can't now go back on. He's got to admit that those were not official acts, so there's no immunity, and try to indict him and go forward with a jiffy quick trial with a very friendly judge to the prosecution before, it's not going to happen before November, but before inauguration. That's before J6. That's what they're looking to do. So all the action won't be on the Dem side. There's still going to be some action over on the GOP side because the Dems are going to go down swinging. I want to tell you, this just hit from NBC News and reporter Amanda Turkle, who reports as follows. Several of Biden's closest allies, including 3 people directly involved in the re-election efforts, tell, and then she names 3 reporters, they now see his chances of winning as 0. These are several of his closest allies. Quote, he needs to drop out. One campaign official said, he will never recover from this. Quote, no one involved in the effort thinks he has a path, said a second person working to elect him. I think they're right, but I don't overstate it, but I think that's the smart analysis. What do you think?
I think it is right. And, every day when I follow the story, I take my own sort of gut check and, I ask myself, what percentage do I think, the likelihood of Joe Biden getting out? And it was, the first few days, it was at 90%. And then, there's an ebb and flow to the story. And you saw a few days back when, he started kind of, getting back in the game and my percentage went down to 60%. It's back at 95, 98 now because the inevitability of it is so overpowering. When you look at Nancy Pelosi's statements yesterday, when you look at you don't have to read the tea leaves. It is just so blatantly obvious. He is going to be convinced against his will to change his mind. That is almost certainly the case. I mean, look, is there a tiny chance that he just, against all the advice, against all the urgings, he puts his head down and grinds it out to the convention? Yeah, but even then, I think at that point, it'll be so contentious that I wouldn't rule out. Now, this is probably the least likely of all the crazy scenarios out there, but I still think I wouldn't rule out the idea that they could try to forcibly remove him. You've touched on this before, the language which says, in good conscience, we delegates have pledged to vote for Joe Biden. Well, that's a pretty big loophole, because in good conscience, if you think that the guy's not up to the job and your conscience doesn't allow you to vote for him, that's a pretty big out. Now, I don't think it'll get to that, but I think if necessary, the Democrats are prepared to go there because they have a very strong survival instinct, the Democratic Party, like any political party. You saw this in 2020 when they almost inexplicably nominated Bernie Sanders to be the nominee, which was, I thought, would have been political suicide heading into that election, just given the realities of the politics. I thought Trump would have, would easily beaten him. But they came to their senses and belatedly, kind of rallied around Joe Biden, who was viewed as, well, he's not, that far left, so we could probably get him in. You're seeing the same thing happen in slow motion here. This idea that, well, maybe Biden can get in. No, everyone is coming to the conclusion that we're going to lose. We're going to lose the White House. We're going to lose the House. They're already going to lose the Senate before this debacle. And here's the big thing, Megyn, and you as a lawyer and a former Supreme Court watcher and a current Supreme Court watcher, this doesn't get enough attention. That it is terrifying to Democrats that this man, Donald John Trump, who has already appointed a third of the Supreme Court justices, may well, by the end of this drama, have appointed two-thirds of the Supreme Court justices. I don't know if he's going to get 3 picks, but he'll get several. And that alone is terrifying when you think about, from the Democratic perspective, when you think about how they view the Dobbs decision and all these other decisions and lots of developments, not to mention the other judiciary further down on the bench, on the court. So yeah, this is really a bad time for Democrats, and I think they are determined to get him off the ticket.
That's a good point about the Supreme Court. We're going to hear the din in the wake of this disaster for Sotomayor to leave the bench at, what is she, 70? Grow even louder than it's been, right? She's relatively young, but she's not in the best health. But I mean, this is a young age for somebody to go. But we already heard it. We heard somebody say Kagan should go. Kagan is young and has a long future ahead of her, but they just want to make sure nothing happens to they want somebody who's basically 33 to be appointed to the bench by whoever's running the show over there in the Biden White House. And right now they control the Senate. And thanks to the Republicans getting rid of the filibuster, which was in response to the Democrats getting rid of it for lower court judges, they do control the Senate right now. Listen to this. This just broke. The NATO leaders are speaking out now. This is via Politico. Behind the smiling handshakes, NATO leaders are unnerved by a weakened Biden. Quote, "You're worried if he knows which direction he's going or whether he's going to fall or what he's going to forget," said one senior European diplomat. It's just what's interesting about it is that they're talking and that the press is reporting it. And then secondly, there's this by Ed O'Keefe with CBS, who says as follows. He's gotten his hands on the memo that's going to be shared with Democratic senators later today. The top members of the Joe Biden campaign are going over to try to shore up support with them. Quote, there's no indication that anyone else would outperform the president against Trump. Hypothetical polling of alternative nominees will always be unreliable, and surveys do not take into account the negative media environment that any Democratic nominee will encounter. The only Democratic candidate for whom this is already baked in is President Biden. That's an interesting argument because I do think, Bill, the press, yes, Republican commentators will probably take shots at whoever steps in. But the press is Democratic. They're largely Democrats. And the press is going to anoint anyone not named Biden. Am I wrong?
No, and you're actually exactly right. The press there'll be a rally around the beleaguered Democratic ticket effect, whether it's Harris or somebody else. And believe me, you're already seeing foreshadowings of this, where it's going to be, let's win one for Joe. Let's win one for the Gipper. He's the hero now. You saw this even in Clooney's, op-ed yesterday, where he said, you can be the hero. So there will be this sort of gross hero worship, and they'll carry him, hoist him up on their shoulders and march him around like, we're winning this for Joe. And I'll tell you, the relief of just succeeding in getting Biden off the top of the ticket will translate into an enthusiasm among Democrats, especially if obviously it's going to be a younger, more vigorous candidate, no matter who it is. That will translate into, these polls that show that, that Biden's too old. None of that, all of that is a moot point now. We have a young, vigorous, and we're going to defeat the evil, and the conversation will turn back to Trump, and the press will be so vested, and they'll be so excited in covering this shiny new object, whoever it is, that'll count for a lot of points when it comes to voting.
It's also going to relieve the press in a way of its responsibility in covering this whole thing up to begin with. If Biden stays in the role, runs, and loses, the come to Jesus moment that's going to happen after the loss is going to include the media. But if they can sub him out and participate in anointing the new Democrat, it's all forgotten. We won in the end. That's the important thing. It was Lenin who said, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Well, in the last 4 years, math and reading skills are on the decline. And let's not forget all the woke indoctrination. Plus, inflation is making things harder than ever, but there is some good news. And that's why I want to tell you about Freedom Project Academy. Freedom Project Academy was built on Judeo-Christian values and classical curriculum. Love that. Students read full books. They write in cursive. They study the full scope of history. They graduate with knowledge years above their public school peers. They have payment plans, so you don't need to choose between paying the mortgage and ensuring your kids get a decent education. I could have used these folks when we pulled our kids from the woke, annoying private schools in New York. So you can save 10% right now on tuition when you enroll at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Check out their fully accredited courses, you can preview classes, payment plans, and request a free information packet today. Enrollment ends soon, so please don't wait. Take back your child's education at Freedom Project Academy, freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.